Good evening.
Hello, how are you?
Good morning, Sai.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
It's evening in India, so good evening to Lalith. Good morning.
Yeah. Now, every week
right.
until the end of the coding period is to give updates. So, we'll
Yes,
give an
I'll
update.
go first, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we can prepare like a formal PPT. So last week, I had shown this timeline from my proposal itself, where I said that June 2016 will have the coding period, and we will implement the baseline and using about the environment. So this is what I've done in week one. Basically, I have set up the environment. This was the repository, like in the repository, this folder, like this directory was allocated for me to work in. So as I promised, I've made two other directories in it. One is the agents and the other one is the tasks. So in agents, the initialize.py is just to initialize it, and the base.agent is basically the main class, and then the other four agents are the inherited classes. So comparing it to the other models that have been done previously in in Orel, usually they used to keep all of these, like there were two agents, but I have four. And since I have four, I didn't want to keep all of them in one course. So I've maintained four different files there. And similarly for tasks also, I have kept the tasks separately. And then I have a simulation.py. The simulation.py is the one that will run this whole environment. So simulation.py is actually in the same level as the agents and the tasks. And simulation.py will import everything from these files, from these directories, and that's how it will run. So yeah, this is the output that it gets. So till now, like the allocation of the tasks is just random, like not random, but it's just the environment setup which I have done. So the tasks will be assigned on the basis of how they have come. So like that's why the maintainer is still doing the docs. But once I incorporate MEB, which is multi-arm banded into it, will work better. And the maintainer will obviously not do the docs, and docs will only go to the knowledge curator. And like just for like sake of ease, I have also just given the agents some names. So that's what I have done in the environment. And then apart from that, I have updated the README file on how we can actually set up this project or how this environment can run. Then this is my blog for week one. Like, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, it redirected, right? Yeah. So this is my blog for week one. I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is my blog for week one.
Okay.
Where, yeah, actually, there I used GitHub pages as I spoke about it last week. I faced a few issues, but I think now it's easy since I got a hand of it. It was my first time using GitHub pages, so I took some time. But yeah, this is what I have put for my week one. And yeah, this is just my page, and I'll keep updating it every week. And I also have an initial blog ready, which I haven't yet posted. It's like a draft, but I'll post it soon.
Okay.
Yeah, and then talking about the week two objectives, where we will actually use multi-arm banded. So that is for agent specialization, the task pipeline, which will implement the dynamic task generation with priorities. So now we just have the dynamic task generation, and then obviously the role-based baseline, which is the MEB precursor and MEB preparation. So this is entirely going to be based on MEB. So yeah, how will the agent and task interact? The agent decision points will take two success criteria. That's the task acceptance criteria and the success and failure. And the task characteristics, like what kind of a task it is, like it's about feature docs and the difficulty, obviously. It depends on how we have done it. I think in one of the previous RL models, it's given like Mars level, Earth level, and Moon level. So that's what I'm going to be talking about over here, but in just simpler terms. Yeah, and these are the two reference papers. Okay, one second. I don't think it redirected, so.
Okay. I'm curious about the MAB, yeah, so maybe you could look at those papers. Yeah, there we go.
So yeah, So this is the time-sensitive banded learning. It's not
Yeah, okay.
exactly appropriate and it's pretty old as well. So this is one of the papers that I'm going to be using. Introduction just has theory, but more about how the problem formulation takes place over here, like how an agent is sequentially going to choose the actions from the set of actions that it has and it observes the corresponding outcomes to the tasks and how the agent will do it based on the docs or what kind of task it is. And yeah, it has an algorithm. So I'll probably be implementing this or let's see. And then the other paper that I have is this one, which is a bit more recent and it's content constrained. So it has something about multi-report task allocation. It has a brief information about how multi-amp bandwidths will work. And I mean, it's not exactly what I'm going to do, but I can take reference from it. And there was a section that, so yeah, the problem formulation section is actually what I'll be referring to mainly.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so coming back to the PPT. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks good. You're working on kind of setting up the environment and then figuring out the problem formulation, or at least working that into code. And then you have your blog post set up. That looks pretty good. Do you have a link to your blog post you can put in the chat?
That's what I was going to
have.
say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll share it actually. It's not pretty good because I'm still working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll have like a weekly. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just improve over it weekly. Like, I still have to focus on the minor details where my GitHub links and all are not yet attached.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be good. Good. Looks good. So next up, who wants to present next?
So last week I wasn't able to join. I dropped a mail. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, and based on that I start. I have a little initiated the code and all. So should I have to create a directory and where I dump all my code in there, similar to that of like Devo hypergraph that Mehul and Tariq has done similarly in the repo, because I got the credential access for GitHub.
Yeah.
So
it should be in there. You should have a folder I made in there, I think. Well, you can use DevoGraph if you want. You can create your own actually if you want. But this is and then Jayadratha will. I mean, I don't remember if I created one for him, but he could probably create his own. Just basically work out of that repository, and
sure.
if you want to make like a standalone thing within that repository, just as long as it's there, so it's all kind of in one place. And we can, yeah.
Okay. So, and the other question was, I have a few, concerns regarding the data set too. So I am currently using the temporal C elegans data set that it's already available in the DevoGraph. So should I continue using that data set, or should we extend to some of the other data sets, or shall I start on top of it?
Why don't we work on the temporal one for now, and then
okay.
The idea is to start like with a single data set and then move on to others. So you'd start with like a core thing, and then you'd move on and add things, because adding in data right away is hard. It's hard to integrate the data sets and get
So okay, and yeah, so last week I wasn't able to do much of a thing, but in the next week I believe that I can bring some real good progress in the the data set, how we're going to structure and how we're going to design neural networks. So as I've discussed, so I would implement various attention versions of graph neural network with a certain topology design. And so the star design probably. So I'll go with it. I'll discuss with Mehul, and I'll just bring out some new updates in the next week, which has like multiple attention mechanisms.
Okay,
So
sounds good. All right, so you're going to try out different sort of approaches before we dive in.
Oh.
So this is something you're going to benchmark, or you're just going to try different things and see which one works best? And
so first is so basic vanilla hypergraph neural network. So that is, I mean, like it does not have like a complex attention layers and all. So I'll try out hypergraph attention networks. I'll try out hypergraph, I mean, like Sage version and attention version and dual hypergraph version. So there are like 2 to 3 versions of the hypergraphs. We ought to see like, you know, how and which actually fits into the format that we are actually trying to plug in for the C elegans. So it's more of a study where it will help us to understand that, you know, which design principle can lead us to a better outcome. So it's more of an experimental understanding how the connections have been made and all. So it's always good to try, you know, all of them, or at least to try 2 or 3, so that we can understand, okay, so what choice we have made, we can make it with a clearer thought.
okay, that sounds good.
Jesse, I'm not able to hear you. I think you're trying to say something. Oh, okay.
Sorry, I was trying to test my audio setup, and then I realized I'm on camera and it looks silly, but that's what I can do. But thank you for the update. Please continue.
Yeah, thank you for the update. All right. Thank you, Lalith. Jayadratha, are you able to?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as in the last week I was telling, I was working on the growing GNN part in DevoGraph dataset. I mean the report, that report, the growing GNN which Party has done last year. I am using the same datasets, but the problem is I'm trying to make it such that it is like I can use it for temporal graph, discrete time temporal graph. So it essentially means for each timestamp there should be some graph and it is growing. But I was getting some issues. I mean, like in each timestamp, I'm not getting like a graph, complete graph. So I'm trying to like working on that, and I guess in the next week I'll have something on that front. I have already built, but I mean the timestamp I'm getting it has around like 300 270 number of timestamps, but for me what I was getting it is lesser. So I have to see what I did, if I did something wrong somehow. And other thing is I'm using what she used last year, that is cell bath and position .csp, that one. But as I was telling last week, for connectome data, I have to see if there is anything that is available in the literature. So that part I have not started it, but I guess by next week I'll have something to show on that front.
All right.
So that I mean we can work on the both the dataset together. Yeah. So already we are working on cell lineage, but for connectome, I don't have any data. So for cell lineage, we have the data from like growing GNN repo under DevoGraph.
Yeah, we have data for the connectome. I can share that with you. I don't know if you
That
know
will
what
be
it is.
great.
Yeah.
Is it changing with time? I mean, that can
Yeah.
then
It's basically an approximation of like neurons as they're differentiating in development. So it has the timestamps and it has I think the ID for the lineage, and then it has like the cell it's going to differentiate into. So I have to get that to give you exactly the right.
that will be good. Is it available in the DevoGraph report itself or?
Not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's in the same repository. I'll just have to like point you to it.
That will be good.
Yeah.
Then I can work on both the data sets together. That will be a lot easier.
Yeah. All right, that sounds good. And you said that you were doing literature review this week. So were you doing what was that like?
Yes, I was looking what are the new, new things that has come on discrete time temporal graph or temporal graph. What are if there is any literature review that has come. So, new whatever benchmarking thing that has come, and I found few, but I didn't read it thoroughly. But I guess next week I'll explain it better.
Okay. Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, I found few of them, and those are like come just few months back, 1-2 months back, and I can explain those.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, welcome Mehul and Sarrah. Would either of you like to give an update or?
Hi Bradley.
Hi.
Hi everyone. So I don't have any update, but I was talking to Lalith and Joy. I was hearing a little bit about Joy's literature review, and he has been traveling last couple of weeks, and so we were just like discussing reading so he was reading like few papers and like telling about me. I think like what we can do is Joy, he can like solidify more all these things and put it in points, and that can be a good starting point to explore different ideas. But I don't have any like such updates from my side.
Okay, oh, that's good. Thank you.
Hi, yeah.
Here we go.
So yeah, same from my side, not much of an update as such. But yeah, I was definitely thinking of I was busy throughout the week, my job. But I was thinking of setting up something with Vidhi as well, like a one-on-one meet to kind of get to know what she's been doing. So I'll mostly try to do that on Sunday or the next week somewhere and get to connect. But yeah, not much of an update as such from my side, and nice to see the updates from Jaya as well, like Jaya and Lalith from their side. Because that's interesting to me. It's the GNN part, like I've not worked on it, but I've heard about it. So yeah, nice to
know. Great, thank you.
And yeah, I'll connect with Vidhi, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we can set up something. Maybe on Monday if you're free, Mehul, we can set up something.
Sure, works for me. Tuesday will be better though.
Okay, that also works for me then. Evening, we'll talk on the timings.
Perfect. Sure.
Thanks. Yeah, and you can just ping me when you're having meets with Lalith, etc. I don't know if I'll be available, but if it's in the evening after work hours, I might be.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that's good.
This week I was able to meet Mehul in person in Delhi.
Okay.
While I was traveling, and that was great meeting him after a long time in person.
Yeah. So we probably will be meeting next time, like after like GSoC complete. So it was a great meeting, Ajay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for the updates. So Jesse, I see that you're kind of ready to go. I know that you've been busy turning out posts, I guess.
Wow, I don't even know where to begin this week, or what's the best thing to talk about here. Oh, I guess then my mic's already on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm kind of trying to, okay. There's a lot to say about this week. It's actually been one of the busiest weeks I've had in a while. I'm trying to think what to say here versus what to say tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll be heading back to San Diego this weekend. I'll be there for a week or so for graduation, for the ceremony, and some other things that I'm going to try to do there. I'm hoping in the next week or two, maybe more like 2 to 3 weeks, some of the data and direction interns will start. I have confirmation from a few of them, and I wouldn't mind if they would join this meeting. I'm kind of presenting this meeting as an optional meeting to them because, you know, some of them are all over and have other things to do. But I would really like it if they were here for some of the like open source content that we talk about. I had, for very brief updates, I posted most, but not everything on, I don't like this, on LinkedIn. And I'm mentioning that just because there's probably the easiest way to see a lot of the things and some of the links that I think would be really useful and interesting. I did something for the Roots of Progress Institute earlier this week. I submitted an application to one of their events, one of their fellowships, and then I've been writing this essay about longevity type topics, and Bradley's sort of giving me some advice on that. More about that later. That's not really relevant here. Maybe you or more so tomorrow's meeting. Tuesday was this really wonderful event that I've been trying to get into for a while, which is sort of philosophy, AI and philosophy event. And it was Oxford and the Cosmos Institute. And what's relevant here, and I do think they're trying to open source some of it, is some of the work they're doing about governance and AI stuff is attempting to be open source, I think, or at least it could be updated with some open source things. Like we focused on the big topic for this week was basically called the Habermas machine, and it was sort of about a mechanistic approach to having folks engage with political content or have discourse, and how you can go from these different inputs and how the conversation is structured to sort of essentially, you could say, elevate or at least have better discussion, and hopefully lead to like reasonable consensuses that people actually value and don't just dismiss and not just artificially generated, but a very particular process to structuring conversation and having like actual machine learning and AI models that help facilitate this and the chatbots, but also the structure and getting data to verify that this is actually working. There's a really nice discussion on that, and it builds off of a similar theme from last month, literally like 36 days ago at the MIT Societal and Ethical Responsibilities of Computing, the sort of ethics conference. And in that, one of the last presentations I saw at that time was the GovLab, MIT GovLab with Lily Tsai, who's actually doing quite a similar thing. Her approach is a bit more different modules to some of it was intentionally looking at how do we just depolarize conversation, but like sort of these governance applications to AI, and because they chatbots, but AI facilitated discussions. So one of the things that I actually may work on or offer as a project series for data and direction is looking at those things, both the Habermas machine and what the GovLab is doing, because I think that's quite an interesting space. And I know a few of the people in the group may already want to go there as it is. So that's sort of a preview for that. Yesterday, I had a bunch of Ecolapto meetings, which I'll say more about later. Some of them were on like AGI, some were on computing. Morgan was actually at one. I don't think Morgan's here today. He's not here today. We'll talk about that tomorrow. It's just a lot of things going on this week in terms of meetings and preparation, and I'm kind of looking forward to next week being a bit more low key. And there's a few there's some, like in terms of actual, say, like professional development topics, things to talk about. I think I have like 4 or 5 things that are drafted out and mostly ready to be published. In terms of like writing an article about it, but I guess my and I don't know how much this is. Everything which so far was sort of just broad updates. I don't know if I don't know what you want to talk about the rest of today, Bradley, but I mean, there were some conversations yesterday about some startup life and building things in one of the discussions, and then also today on my mind is particularly about a particular part of leadership or management of projects that involves knowing your strengths and weaknesses, as far as like how you want to direct or discuss anything. Like it's really domain or situation agnostic, but more general theme of cultivate your strengths and develop the mastery. It's sort of you can have the T-shaped graph kind of a thing of expertise versus breadth and depth, but more so, and I think this is the thing that is not really spoken about enough. Part of mastering something or whatever your particular skill set is knowing the degrees of when to not use it and to get out of the way, or to say, oh yeah, I'm really great at this particular thing or this leadership style or having this kind of an insight, but it's not applicable here. And I find that to be one of the biggest roadblocks to developing a lot of things. Because a lot of times founders or project leaders or whatever only want to do the thing that they're really good at and then talk only out of that reference point and then kind of create a certain blindness. So I could say more about that too. I'll let Bradley kind of queue up the discussions that you want to have, but those are the things that are happening or on my mind this week.
Yeah, I think that latter conversation about knowing strengths and weaknesses, maybe that's something we could talk about in more depth here.
Okay. Now?
Yeah,
or...
we can go ahead now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's sort of a lot of classical phrases that come to mind. Like I'm writing, I might title something, the essay that I'm writing about it something like, unpacking with great power comes great responsibility from a functional leadership point of view. That's sort of one of the draft titles I had. Another like common phrase you hear is like when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, blah 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 blah. So it's sort of like it's really important to develop like whatever you're strongest at. And this is I would even say, you look at a lot of like the professional development strengths tests, things, oh, what kind of a thinker are you? What kind of a leader are you? Like, yeah, you want to develop that, or even like MBTI. And I actually had a nice conversation the other day about personality theory and these things like that. Like whatever it is that you have, it's great to build your strength out. And it's important to do that very much. But the next level of that is knowing not just how to do the thing, but the sort of relative applicability And you gotta know, and there's a certain amount of, you can say ego checking, you can say humility, you can say awareness, you can say commitment to quality, whatever you want to frame it as. There's a certain understanding of the diminishing, like, okay, if I go this far, the diminishing returns of focusing on this viewpoint is here. And then having sobriety around that is really key. And a lot of times, you know, when you're for early career folks in particular, maybe this is like, oh, I don't know about this. I have so much to learn. I'm just trying to get started. Like, yeah, fine. But like, don't worry too much about that. But what I'm offering here is sort of the perspective that maybe when you're dealing with awkward leadership situations or team leads that don't quite know what's going on, or a CEO that's very convinced about a certain way of doing things, this may be a play. They may be sticking to their guns a little bit too much, or they may not be aware of how to effectively choose teammates that will counterbalance their inclinations. And that has a lot of trickle-down impacts on how people in organizations will talk about stuff, how people will reference things. Oh, I got to talk to the CEO this way, which is like a fine thing to learn how to do. But there's definitely a sense of, you can kind of tell, you can develop a lens of, okay, where is somebody at in terms of this thing that I'm talking about regarding knowing their strengths, and then knowing, are they a fair broker and earnestly looking at, okay, I'm getting out of my lane of expertise, I'm getting out of the area, and do they acknowledge that or not? Because when they don't acknowledge that or not, that's a sign that, okay, this person's really confident about what they're doing, and maybe excellent, maybe the best in the world at what they're doing. But if they don't know when it's not applicable, then you have to kind of understand what the delta is, or what the deviation is, or what, like, then you have to understand that they only see, they may see something really, really clearly and really expertly, and not fully. And I think that's part of the challenge of dealing with expertise and the expert writing discussions too, is you know, at a really high level, there's tension between someone saying, no, it is this thing, it is my expertise point of view, this is the way to do it. Like, you'll see this come up a lot in deep learning is the answer versus deep learning isn't the answer, versus we need more cognitive computing. Like, the whole AI symbolic cognitive hybrid debate is one of them. Or like a lot of things about governance, a lot of things about having the best way to do project management. Like, there's sort of these, you know, there's a difference between steel manning or being really committed to a point of view because it works, versus steel manning the benefits of a particular point of view versus the humility and the discernment of, is this working or not? So I'll leave it at that, or if there's questions or discussions, we can follow up on that. But really just the main point is understanding both in yourself, and then a lot of what I'm trying to do from here to there in the leadership and the mentoring and some of the training programs is develop this organizational literacy where you're developing this for yourself, but then how does this particular approach or impact or skill or awareness affect how the whole organization is operating, particularly in these innovation contexts. Like, when you're trying to build new things, it is different than if you're just duplicating. If all the questions are solved and the complexities of the problems have been ironed out, it is quite different in my experience than, oh, we don't know how to build this thing, but we know how to build this component, and we're trying to get into this market, we're trying to steer this in this direction. It's very different. So as you spend more time in both of the spaces, getting the literacy about those differences matters, and the general skill sets and awareness of like how it affects the organization as a whole is what I'm trying to get at. So I'm open to discussion or questions, or move on.
Okay, well that sounds great. So that's an interesting point about, like, you know, different fields being kind of conditioned by circumstance, but also the way people argue. Like, I mean, I remember the AI debates that Gary Marcus put on, and they were kind of, in a way, they were contrived because there was this imperative to have a debate, and sometimes people would agree with each other more or less, and then that was kind of, but that was framed as a debate. So it was like contentious for the sake of being contentious, but then there's a lot that we agree on, and it was interesting from that standpoint. But also, like in academics, when you have like these things that kind of people perpetually argue about, like definitions or like what's better, Model A or Model B, and people go back and forth on this, and it just becomes this kind of exercise in itself. It's like the argument becomes more of an exercise than the actual getting information about Model A is better than Model B or Model B is better than Model A. And I think you can probably attach any of the sort of machine learning models du jour to that. Like, the new latest model comes out and people argue that it's like the best model ever. It's so much better than every other model. And maybe it's not. Maybe we can use, like Gayen's in different ways. And maybe that the new model isn't necessarily as good as some of the older models at certain tasks. Mm-hmm. It's just the way that's presented in the field is that this latest model is the best. And if I perform a benchmark, I should just assume that we should all move to that model. And everything else kind of gets subsumed into like the bin of like being passé, and that affects what you can publish. It affects how people implement models, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
So another maybe this is a slight tie-in to something that is published, and I wrote it for a very different audience, but I will share it here. It's a Substack post, but I wrote it for people that are sort of on the cusp. I actually wrote it for a very, very specific audience and a very specific set of people. And every few years, every few months, like once or twice a year, I'm compelled to make this PSA that's basically it's basically around, I can't get this to play now. I don't know why it's not showing me this. It's basically around the idea that if you're, here we go. It's basically the idea of, make this a little bigger here. It's designed for people that are essentially on the cusp of knowing what to do. And like, it was kind of stemmed from this conversation of, this version of it was stemmed from the conversation of, even if there's a lot of bad things happening in the world, like we still have to kind of build stuff. We still have to sort of actually do things that either matter, or let's say the work of building better things still endures. And I'm not having the best setup here, but the segue that I'm trying to make is, even in the sense of, I think a lot of times people don't understand how some of the less fruitful debates, and some of them are very important philosophical debates, but some of the debates, and you could say the bickering of things, unintentionally disincentivises people from realizing there's actually stuff to do or build in the world. So this post is for people that are on the cusp of things and kind of disenfranchised about things. Here's a 2020 version that I found, 2022 version. Was like PSA wondering if you're wondering or unsure of it, like if research is for you. Let's say somewhere a small or large group of people are talking about exactly about what you're wondering about at a level that you can access and listen to and grow to and contribute to. You may not know who or what to ask right now, but folks can help guide you even if you don't know the pathway where to go either. So if you stay true to your questions and listen to your curiosity, there are rewarding experiences, treasures, and discoveries awaiting. So every 6 months or so, I'm compelled to make these things because I find a lot of the biggest stuff is people get apathetic and don't really know what to do, and they don't really know where to put their efforts into things. And the post here goes on to kind of, say, yeah, we've got a lot to innovate, we've got a lot to do, and all this other stuff here, and you can read that or whatever. But the point of the post is essentially assembly is still required in what we have to do in the world. And I think there's an element of there's an element of how do you bring people into the fold to actually focus on the meaningful things at hand, and understanding that those debates are part of it, and how do you, I mean, part of the idea of the whole frontier map project is for people to understand the debates in the fields, and then say, okay, well, things could go in this direction. Maybe they didn't go in this direction, but they went in another direction. So how do I, choose where I want to contribute in the development of those fields and things like that. So a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, I don't know if you had any more you wanted to say about those things.
Well, yeah, this kind of comes back to onboarding for organizations. Like, we create onboarding materials and we try to get them where you want to get people to a minimal level of competence, I guess, is kind of the goal there. So you might have like a README where like it has all the information about contributing to a project or joining an organization. What do you need to do? You need to have like security privileges, or do you need to like where are things in the organization? And then some of that is, obviously something you can put in the onboarding materials and are sort of important for everyone. And then some of the things are not for everyone. Maybe it's like for if I'm working on a special project and I need a data set, I won't see that in the onboarding guide because it's not maximally useful to everyone. It's just that, you have to go and ask someone about it, or you have to have the right connection there, I'll connect you with this. So there's that. I like that because, if you put everything in the onboarding guide, everything for everyone, it's unwieldy, and we wouldn't even know where to find things in the onboarding guide anyways, because, you'd have to kind of know how, like what the question is. And then, when you join an organization, a lot of times you don't know what the question is. It's like, how do I ask someone, or who do I ask, and then how do I ask them something that they can give me insight on?
It's very relevant because I'm working with some like onboarding for the data and direction stuff. So yeah, that's on the mind. I forgot the specific transition point from what I was talking about with the whole leadership stuff and then debates and onboarding, but because I was going to try to double back and connect something, but this is all important. So I don't know much. So I guess we have 15 minutes left, so I can continue to freestyle on this. But if you want to talk about anything else, we can do that too.
Yeah, I guess I'll shift gears at this point, unless there are like any last words about that before I move on.
I had like a small update that kind of skipped my mind.
Okay.
Here. But yeah, basically, so over the course of the last month in my corporate job, I participated in an hackathon.
Okay.
And in which so I can't, because it's definitely not open source, very much the opposite of that. So can't that's why it didn't occur to me to talk about it here. But then it was the theme was of agentic AI, so it kind of built quite similarly to kind of how I built my project last GSoC, where I'd taken agentic AI and kind of put it into our domain of neuroscience and of trying to understand how sustainability works. So our team kind of did the same thing of trying to make agents, AI-based, AI-powered agents that could understand financial things and kind of understand data from our company's clients and model based on that. So even when Bradley said you could take any ML model and basically claim that, so even what's happening now is like this fusion of ML and LLM. And that's also what we did. So we had like an ML model that was training on historical data and generating outputs, and then those outputs were being fed to an LLM who was feeding off of that data and that prediction, and then creating its own insights. So yeah, I just thought something interesting to share. But yeah, and like my team made it to the top 12 in the organization, but then we didn't make any further.
Oh. Well, that sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. It was like a cool thing. So like it was over the course of a month. We were juggling it with our normal workload, but it was nice.
Yeah.
Missed hackathons being out of college for like more than a year now, just about a year. So missed the experience of hackathons. That was nice.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could tell us more sometime if it's something you can talk about, like the.
Yeah, I'd have to filter out the like the information that I can't share.
Right.
But definitely would like to speak about it sometime.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Y'all are interested, like what we did and stuff.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Yeah, Jesse, do you have anything else you wanted to say before we move on?
Well, for Sarrah stuff, that's great, and also if you ever wanted to write up like either a direct experience or like hackathon tips, kind of a Medium post or something about that, or like have kind of an interview about that, we can do that for sure. But definitely let's hear more about that. In terms of the other stuff, I was going to say something, but I think I mostly lost it. But yeah, just my periodic reminder for my sort of opening and closing theme for a lot of the professional development stuff is being intentional about developing the context that you're operating within, and understanding where people's advice and their angles and what their agendas are, and what their responsibilities and who they answer to is critical. And it's really tough because when you're starting out, you don't have the context. But I feel like that's just whether it's like when I transitioned to like being a political science major at one point in my life, I didn't know anything about theories or what was going on in the world, and it takes time to get the context. So continue to not only like read the news about things, including the bigger tech stuff going on if that's what you're concerned about, but the intentionality of understanding the instance, the people, the actors, the trajectories, and you develop this broader context of like how things are actually moving in the space. I find that to be the over and over and over again, like the real work of developing things. Within that context, you can have the strategies and tactics and then build things together, that's the actual work. But then there's other part of it is sort of the recurring reminder to let those things bloom and gain context over time. So that'll be my closing soapbox for that. And we had a very nice discussion today. So thank you everybody for that.
All right, thank you. A lot of things in the chat, like just conversation and some links. All right, so I'm going to finish up by talking about this upcoming event. This is at the Active Inference Institute, or they do a lot of all of their activities online. So they do things in like a set of coded documents on YouTube, and we have private meetings on Zoom. So it's a totally virtual institute. And one of the things that they do, one of their signature things is to have these live streams. So they have live streams on different topics. They have project management, they have research, they have live coding, all sorts of different things that they do live streams on. And this is something that they're putting on, I think on June 18th, so that's coming up, I think in 2 weeks almost, maybe less than 2 weeks now. It's on a Wednesday. And this is called The Value of Open Source Software. And it's a discussion of this paper with that name. And this is their org stream. So they have like a theory stream and a math stream. And this says their org stream. So this is kind of the part of their series. And they're going to go over this paper. And I'm not sure what the details are yet. I mean, it's a free-flowing conversation. So, someone's going to present the paper, and then we'll have people in the discussion talk about it. And Daniel Friedman, who's the main organizer of the Active Inference Institute, he just sent me a message and inviting myself and maybe some other people from the lab to join in on the discussion. We were involved in the work at the symposium last year in November, so and we did talk about open source and open access back then, so we would probably have some things to contribute to this as well. So that's motivation for the paper. So this is the paper, and I have this paper. It's available online. It's a working paper from the Harvard Business School. It's Manuel Hoffman, Frank Nagel, and Yanyo Zhao. And this is called The Value of Open Source Software. They talk, and so this is just kind of viewing open source software through an economics lens. So they do a lot of, there's a hardcore discussion on economics in this paper. So, it's probably going to be intimidating for people who aren't familiar with economics, but basically they're making an argument that open source software has some value, and that the value is added by the people who create open source software, the contributors. And we have to kind of estimate what the value is, who's adding the value, how does that relate to the structure of open source organizations, and so forth. So the abstract reads, the value of a non-pecuniary or free product. See, I told you this is economic lingo, so non-pecuniary means free, is inherently difficult to assess. So this is, again, this is going to be an estimate. They're trying to estimate the value, and it's a hard problem in and of itself. A pervasive example is open source software, a global public good that plays a vital role in the economy, and it's foundational for most technology we use today. So public good is something that is for society instead of for profit or for maximizing profit. However, it is difficult to measure the value of OSS due to its non-pecuniary nature and lack of centralized usage tracking. So this latter statement, lack of centralized usage tracking, that's not exactly true. We have metrics for usage tracking, but they're unreliable. It's not like you're making widgets and you're selling widgets and you have an inventory and you know exactly how many are produced, how many are sold. With open source software, we have this issue where people can make forks and copies, and we can have people, use things in different ways, or even contribute in different ways, and we don't have really good metrics for that. We might have a metric for someone who views a page or downloads something. We have no idea how those things get used after that, or we don't have the quantitative information about that. So this is the kind of the problem that they're addressing. Therefore, OSS remains largely unaccounted for in economic measures. So, we don't know how much it contributes to, say, like GDP, or we don't know how much value or how much it's contributing to the economy. Therefore, it's hard to estimate the value. Although prior studies have estimated the supply side costs to recreate the software, the lack of data has hampered estimating the much larger demand side or usage value created by OSS. So we can estimate sort of how to produce the software because we know we have economic models for creating software. And maybe in the open source context, it's a little bit skewed because there are things that you do in open source software in terms of, creating the software. For example, if I fork the software and modify it, what does that look like in terms of creating supply? I mean, you're creating a fork, you're creating two different versions of the same software. So, but it's a lot easier to do that than kind of like this demand side or usage value. And, value is kind of a hard thing to estimate, but let's just, for the sake of argument, just accept that the demand side is harder to gauge. Therefore, to understand the complete economic and social value of widely used open source software, we leverage unique global data from two complementary sources, capturing open source software usage by millions of global firms. So we first estimate the supply side value by calculating the cost to recreate the most widely used OSS once. So we want to be able to calculate the cost of recreating a piece of software. We then calculate the demand side value based on a replacement value for each firm that uses the software and would need to build it internally if OSS did not exist. In other words, if you build a piece of open source software, a firm can adopt that software, and and then they can get value out of it. If that software didn't exist, then there would have to be something to replace that. You might have to develop the software internally to your firm, or you might have to adopt some other software which might not be as good. So that's kind of what they're getting at with that. We estimate the supply side value of widely used OSS is $4.15 billion US, but that the demand side value is much larger at 8.8 trillion US dollars. So the lesson here is that the supply side value is much lower than the demand side value, meaning that there's a lot of value added on the demand side in firms when they use the software. We find the firms would need to spend 3.5 times more on software than they currently do if OSS did not exist. So you can download, say, like software, say for free, set it up, with your IT team, and because you're not paying for a license, or you're paying less for a license than say you would pay for something like an Adobe product or a Microsoft product, that makes it easier for organizations or firms to, get software and then get value out of it that they don't, that they're not being extorted for, I guess. That brings up an interesting issue about how companies that are closed source, or sometimes companies will, have these enterprise versions that cost a lot of money and offer maybe dubious value to a firm. So, thinking about that in terms of what's being offered to firms and how they're using software and how they're able to sort of get use out of it. You might have, as a firm, you might have to have an IT team to configure the software for your entire organization, or it might be very easy to use. So there's that aspect as well. But OSS basically lowers the cost of software for a lot of firms out there. The top 6 programming languages in our sample comprise 84% of the demand side value of OSS. So in other words, that a lot of, having these programming languages existing in existing form provide value. Furthermore, if you're within a firm, you can, because it's open source, you can modify the software as you need to. And because they're written in common programming languages, you don't need to find someone who's specialized in a very obscure language to modify it. And then they say further, 96% of the demand side value is created by only 5% of open source software developers, which is interesting because that means that most of this demand side value is created by a small number of projects. So, and that makes sense if you think about like a lot of the open source projects that we have out there. A lot of them are kind of like these one-shot projects where they're highly customizable projects where they don't, maybe you have like a main repository and you have a bunch of forks, and all of those forks have developers, so that's like, more, that adds to your number of developers. But most of those forks are highly specialized and therefore not really contributing a lot to demand side value because, maybe a handful of people use each fork. So, it's going to mean that only a few open source developers or only a few projects are really going to add to that increased demand side value. And so that's kind of that's the abstract, and they really go into this in the paper, their analysis, their numbers, and they give this idea that it's really kind of a key thing to understand when we talk about open source is what is the value, not just to kind of a general value to society, but to people using the software. What are they getting out of it, and how is it? What is the payoff, and how can maybe we improve that in some way for people without really losing our open source, principles here. So that's that paper, and that's going to be presented on the, I think, 18th, I said. And so it's going to be the live stream, so you can catch it on YouTube, or I'll be there probably if it fits into my schedule, and that'll be like kind of live, and then there'll be the live stream component. So we'll come back to this after it happens, and we'll talk about it a little bit more then.
What was the date of all that, or could you put that maybe in the Slack channel?
So this is, I'll put it in the Slack channel. It's June 18th at 11 a.m. or so. It's like noon Eastern time.
I'll be a lot more available then, so that's good.
Yeah. It looks like Morgan joined us. I don't know if Morgan had anything to add before we go.
No, just checking in. Sorry.
Okay, it's fine.
We can talk more about the Echoloptus stuff tomorrow. I mentioned you earlier about there, but it's good to see you there. Yeah, it's a good meeting today too.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for attending. Thanks for our updates earlier, and hopefully everyone is motivated for week 2 and of coding period. So, yeah, keep up the good work. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, partner.